Good morning, Warzone kids. Today I'm going to talk about the last of my 3 pearls of healing. Jungian analysis. The others are Zen practice, healing circles. These are all experiences. These are all things I do. And I talked a little bit earlier about 12-step and how different 12-step programs look to the person who's not presently having their life saved by them. You look at it from the outside and it looks like such hogwash. But that ain't got nothing to do with what going to a Narcotics Anonymous is like if you're an addict and your choice was to get high that day or go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Nothing to do with it. Zero. If you go to Wikipedia and look up the article on Carl Jung or Jungian psychoanalysis, you're probably going to get a face full of jargon about shadows and anima and animus and archetypes, and you probably see a little Venn diagram of circles overlapping, this, that, and the other thing. And much like the 12-step thing, you can look at it from the outside and talk about what hogwash it is and talk about evidence and science and all that. None of that will have anything to do with anything in comparison with the experience of finding a good analyst. And my guy happens to be a Jungian analyst. And there's good therapists and bad therapists, and for any different kind of approach you can have. But I'll tell you why I got a bias toward, well, when I explain this, I wanted to make a little lesson and say, I will now tell you why I have a bias in favor of these old school psychoanalysts, and then give you a little lesson about it. See, that's my mind. Let me just tell you what my experience is, and that'll give you the reason for my biases toward it. For 7 or 8 years, or however long I've been going to see this fellow, he's been throwing out breadcrumbs in front of me and paying attention to which ones I peck at. Meaning, I'll tell him what's going on in my life. And by the way, this is harder than it sounds. When I first started to see him, I didn't really know what was going on in my life. I was just full of sound and fury. But it signified something. And he would hear what I was saying about my life, and he would ask me questions about it. And often his questions seemed stupidly abstruse and off the point and tangential at best. And I was very hostile to him, and I thought he was wasting my time a lot, because I didn't understand why he was asking me the questions he was asking me. He was often like totally misunderstood what I said, what I was talking about, I thought. I think different now. But he would just ask me questions and throw out breadcrumbs. And I realize now, as I think of it, that what he was doing was offering me, this guy, chances to see myself in ways that I'd never seen myself. Chances to see what I was doing in a different light. Chances to see the extent to which I was being kind of driven by the parts of me inside that I was alienated from. In that path to healing from harm, the parts of me that were screaming for my attention. They would call that the unconscious. I do not care what you call it. The theoretical framework does not matter. The phenomena is that for many of us, we have a part of our mind that is alienated from us somehow or another. And he was throwing me out breadcrumbs to try to show me how to get these two parts together. It would do no good at all to say, Ben, you have parts of your brain that are alienated from each other. You got to put them together. It might have. Not at that time. It wouldn't have. I wouldn't have known what he was talking about. I'd have told him how great I was, and then gone home and heaved my guts out eating peanut butter. But he was offering me breadcrumbs toward consciousness. And he was offering me chances to see myself in a new light from the outside and to see ways in which I was not different than a zombie, being driven by unconscious needs. When you're acting unconsciously, Ben, he told me, you'll use everyone for everything. When I'm being a bear driven by hunger, I will eat whatever's in front of me that I'm hungry for. That's what it's like to be a human being, divorced from yourself, without any awareness of what's really driving you in your life. You're like a bear coming out of his den in the springtime, famished, driven by hunger, insatiable hunger that you can never end. All that happens is the days get too short, you eat all the salmon, and now you got to go hibernate again. And hopefully you got fat enough to make it through another winter, so you could wake up the next spring and be a ravenous bear driven by hunger, driven to satisfy those needs. When you're acting unconsciously, Ben, you'll use everyone for everything. And he said that to me because that's what I was doing. Using everyone around me for everything I needed. Getting as much strip mining the world. Strip mining the world for anything I might need from anyone around me. Love, affection, approval, status, self-worth, whatever you want to name, that's what I was trying to get from the people around me. When you're acting unconsciously, Ben, you'll use everyone for everything. I learned through a series of extremely painful events that whatever my shrink said to me, he was saying as a way to show me myself. That ain't right. He was offering me chances to let myself see myself, and to let myself lighten up, and to let myself see the reality of who and what I was and what my life was like, and the differences between what I thought about what my life was like and what my life was actually like, and the differences between the guy that I thought I was and the guy that everyone else experienced. When you're acting unconsciously, Ben, you'll use everyone for everything. Truer words never spoken to this guy. That's an experience. It's not reading about Carl Jung and his many foibles in a book or in a Wikipedia page. It's not about Venn diagrams of anima and animus and shadows and whatever other psychoanalytic jargon there is. Those folks need that. I don't. I need to talk to the guy. I need to put myself in front of my shrink, tell him what's actually on my mind, which is a far more difficult task than you might think it is. It takes a lot of practice to even know what's on your mind and then develop the willingness to tell someone else about it because I thought that I was so bad. Now I think that I'm so human, and so is everyone else. And he threw me a lot of breadcrumbs. And maybe when I first started seeing him, I pecked at 1 out of 100. And the rest, I just thought he was a doddering old fool that didn't know what he was talking about. He is 492 years old this year. He's on the track to beat the oldest of the Galapagos turtles. But he's still a vivacious guy, full of life. And he's pumped a lot of life into me. And it's an experience. Jungian analysis. And I have a bias toward folks, therapists that are willing to use phrases like psychoanalysis, because that tells you that they come out of some kind of lineage based on Freud and Jung and others. And the reason that matters to me is that tells me that they have a model. In their mind, they envision me as a human being with a soul. And I just mean everything that goes on in here. Mind, body, everything that goes on in here. The psyche, the butterfly, the soul. My advice to you, do not get caught up in scientific evidence about the subconscious and the foibles of Freud and the arcane stupidity of the id, the ego, and the superego. Do not get caught up in academic discussions about that. Those are words. The phenomena of this is real. There's a German writer called Walter Kaufmann who, if you know him at all, you probably know him as a translator of Nietzsche. But he's a writer, a thinker in his own right. And he has a phrase from a book of his. It's called A Critique of Religion and Philosophy. But he says the question to ask yourself about any great thinker is, what's he seen? What has she seen? What have they seen? That's the question to ask. The question to ask about Freud and Jung and beyond and all those folks is not, what's the level of scientific evidence for the id, the ego, and the superego? Suffering succotash. That's neither here nor there. The question to ask yourself is, what have they seen? And what they've seen, I'll tell you, is that some element of the human psyche has the capacity to operate in different levels. Some element of the human psyche operates in different levels, in a sense that you can have thoughts that come from somewhere and they come into your conscious mind. They come from somewhere. You know where the word id comes from? In the German, if I believe I'm right on this, he just says der es. That's what Nietzsche says. I think Nietzsche was probably the first one to use the word id in this context. Der es. Nietzsche said, you don't think a thought. The thought thinks itself. It thinks the thought. The thought comes from the it. Der es. The thought comes from somewhere in here. And those parts they make up a whole. That's what they've seen. Freud and Jung and those fellas, that's what they've seen. How they wrote about it is how they wrote about it. It was in the past. They were making the first discoveries in this. They were bringing this stuff into, popular awareness. That's what they saw. So don't worry about the stupid articles and the advances in scientific discoveries of this and that, because you're not going to get anywhere based on them Wikipedia articles. You can get somewhere by talking to someone who's seen a lot and spent a lot of time with people who needed to get these parts of their psyche all pulling their oars in the same direction. That's what they've seen, and that's what their skills are. It ain't gonna have any impact to you, the theoretical framework or the suffering succotash of evidence. That comes from a different planet. Unless if you're a scholar writing about that stuff, then rock on. If you got to get a PhD in it, then go do that. What those folks have seen is that you can have parts of your mind that are driving the bus, but that are absolutely pitch black to you. When you're acting unconsciously, Ben, you'll use everyone for everything. And I can tell you that over the course of my 7, 8 years with my shrink, I'm acting unconsciously. I know what I feel what he means by that. I feel it. And I feel what it's like in my head when he asks me, when he throws breadcrumbs out in front of me. I feel that. And I've learned to peck at him. When I first went there, maybe I pecked at 1 out of 100. Maybe now I peck at 1 out of 10. I think I peck at more than that. Because when he asks me something, I ask myself, what's he trying to show me? What's he seen? What's he seen in the difference between the plot events of my life as I describe them and how I talk about those plot events? What's he seen? And what can I see if I open my mind to what's in front of me in my own life? I asked him one time, so it's like this, huh? Like this whole thing, there's this trajectory. Something is jet black in my head. Then it becomes dark gray. Then it becomes dove gray. Then it becomes light gray. And then the sun of awareness rises, and it turns into the rosy-fingered dawn in full color, stretching out toward me. And that's my life. And that's what I've seen, Pilgrim. It's a good day on the Trail to the Western Lands. It's light gray up there in the sky. And I'll bet you after a while, rosy-fingered dawn is going to poke her head through there and shine that light on today's steps on the path to the Western Lands. Let's enjoy the view, Pilgrim. Jet black to gray to the rosy-fingered dawn. It's a good day out there on the trail, Pilgrim. Let's get after it.